नमस्कार, मैं अशोक व्यास और मेरे साथ हैं अटॉर्नी अनु पेशावरिया जो कैलिफोर्निया से हमें जूम के द्वारा ज्वाइन कर रही हैं एंड she has been very helpful for many immigrants in various difficult situations, and especially these days when we have the news headlines related to 129 students being reported for violating immigration related laws here. What is this whole situation? How so many students are caught? Anuji, what is the background of this whole scenario?
So what happened is that United States government set up a fake university in 2015, and it's called Farmington University. And by setting up that fake university, their object was to rope in people who are peddling, who are basically people who try to pay for hire. A lot of students wanted work permits in United States. They wanted to stay here legally. So their job was to recruit people and take a commission out of what the legal fees, the study fee is. So the idea is that they would catch such people who are on a regular basis selling, false student visas to people, or false curriculum practical training, or false OPT, which is called optional practical training. And many people from out of the world and rest of the parts of the world also do the same. So in such a case, the Farmington University was set up in 2015, and this has United States personnel. So basically people from Homeland Security, people from United States government were posing as teachers, were posing as university professors. And that's how they set up this university. And then internally, all these people who contacted them were finally put in detention center. 8 people have been arrested on grounds of bringing in students who are false, who have brought their transcripts.
Let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you. Just trying to understand more how these students who look at maybe through website and they come to know about a university which offers certain courses, and that way they also get opportunity to legally stay in America. I believe most of them ran out of their F1 student visa at some other university, and then they wanted to stay. So what is legally it that prevents them from applying for another university, and if that university helps them get extension of visa or another student visa, so are they at fault? I mean, looks like they are following the procedure.
It looks like that they're following the procedure, but most of the students who have come here, they have certain issues, certain responsibilities. That's what the United States government is saying. They're supposed to do due diligence. They're supposed to make inquiries. Now, the question is, from person to person, you have to see whether they made inquiries or not, whether they knew about the procedure or not. So 90% of the students who come here usually know what are the guidelines of OPT, what are the guidelines of CPT. They usually know because they've been here for 2-3 years. So when they knowingly do something, that is the issue in this case. So whenever a person can be charged, they can be charged with in 2 ways. One is if they had the intent to do something. Secondly, did they really do the action or not? So there are some students who have not done any action. And there are some students who did not have the intention. So this is what the issue is. Every case is different from one person to another. So while at the one hand, United States has done a good deed by trying to catch people who are perpetrating fraud, but at the same time, the manner in which it was done is what is an issue here. In a manner that you want to catch people who are doing this, can you risk the lives of hundreds of others who don't know about it? So on the face of it, you are having 129 students, but 600 students have been affected currently. They are in various detention centers for the last 10 to 11 days. They're sitting in detention centers, and detention centers are far, far away from the city. So to reach even one particular detention center, you have to take a flight, and then from there you have to take a 3-4 hour drive to reach. So how many people are able to reach them and meet them and figure out what really happened? So this kind of a case that has happened has to also keep into consideration the ramifications it can have, and what are the defenses we have. Did we motivate those students? Did we come in front of them to justify what we were doing? Did we try to give them any reasons that what they were doing was legal and they should continue to do that? All these things need to now know who is behind this, who are the people who have done this. A lot more information needs to be uncovered.
So when you say who are the people who have done this, you're talking about students. You're not talking about the authorities who
I'm, I'm
created this.
talking about both. I'm talking about both. So whereas certain students could be at fault, but to what extent are they at fault? If somebody is offered a program and told that this program is registered with the government of United States, they go online and check that that is true. Then the online, it says it's a 50-year-old university. Then the tendency is to believe it's an old university. Maybe what they're saying is correct. And then it also gives you the real IDs. It also gives you driving license based on those IDs. Then it allows you to go out of the country and come back in on a legal ID. So all these things lead a person to believe that it is a genuine university. Whereas on the other hand, what the students needed to have done was they needed to know that they were granted a CPT, which is a curricular practical training. So they were supposed to do their own diligence to know what does a CPT entail. Now a CPT entails that a person has to be within 40 kilometers or 40 meters of the school. They have to work only according to which is eligible for the program. So what kind of work were they doing? Some of them were in other cities and other states. That was not a part of the CPT. So the question now arises that who is the one who lured them into all this? Who is the one who brought them into all this? So if they've got only 8 people who have lured them, they have to individually look at in every case who was involved to what extent.
Okay, so now, are there any precedents of this kind since you have been working with students on pro bono basis also for a long time for people who are in such difficult circumstances? First of all, being away from their home native land itself is trying to adjust, assimilate in the new scenario. So there are certain stress, and many of these students um, are not well off in terms of their parents have a lot of financial difficulties, yet they send them. So that is one side of the story. Another side is, of course, when you look at it from US legal point of view, then if you are at fault, then you are at fault. But what happens moving forward now? If there were options for these students to go to A, B, C, other universities also, but they opted for this because it was cheaper, I believe. They were offering the courses at fees which was much lower than other universities. So they would think that this is a better way for me to continue to be here. So you are actually you are exploiting somebody's vulnerability on the financial ground also and putting them in such a tight spot. So what happens next?
See, I practice law in both the Supreme Court of the United States as well as the Supreme Court of India. So I understand the laws in both the countries. First and foremost, it was the duty of the students who are coming from India to know that they're coming on a student visa. So they have to follow the rules of a student visa. The second issue is that they needed to do due diligence about whether this university existed or not. 90% of the students may have done that. Even if the people in India are poor, the issue is they cannot violate government of US guidelines.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, when the point comes to them being poor, I would say one thing, that first of all, these students need to be immediately removed from detention because they have not committed such a violent crime which deserves that they should be in far-flung detention centers. This could have been handled in a more milder manner. So you're bringing home a point that you are supposed to follow these rules. It's different if most of these people have here committed a crime or they're doing something. There's a whole new game for those cases. So some of the parents, of course, have...
Allow me to interrupt. So the way this university, fake university, was set up by the authorities themselves, looks like they are also partner in crime in making it happen. If the students were allowed to legally visit India, come back and function normally, then if they are at fault, then these authorities are also, if not equal,
Absolutely.
they are at fault.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why what we need to now do is figure out what lapses were there from both sides. What lapses were there from the government of United States? What lapses were there from the students? Who is responsible for how much? And what is the current situation? Who gave them this wrong information? Who is the one who is behind this whole agenda? Because so therefore this has it's nothing to do with what is happening now, but at the same time the anti-immigrant time this has happened is very unfortunate, because at this time there is always already an anti-immigrant sentiment in the country, and this is like another nail in the coffin. So this is a very bad timing, but at the same time there are numerous people who come here who try to break the system, but laws are all man-made. Laws are these are laws which are meant to go, and which laws have waivers. There are lots of cases which can be waived against them. It is all depending on their day in court. It's all about due process. So every person needs to consult an attorney and get to know whether his or her case falls under which category. So some people have just run away. And why have they run away? Because they were saying that the US Department has told them to get out of the country at the fastest and you can self-deport and go. While some, because somebody is coming knocking at their door, their fear of arrest, they just ran away. So they've self-deported. Some are being forced to self-deport. So what we are trying to say is that do not act in a panic or a rush, because one person has been handled in a certain way does not mean that your case is also handled in a similar way. Some students are being reinstated in other universities because they did not commit a crime. So you have to figure out what happened individual to individual. You cannot have one same ground for everybody, although some similarities may occur from case to case, but every case is separate.
Talking from the Indian side, one hears that government of India is planning to have new system or law in place whereby if you are going to travel abroad as a student, you will be asked to register somewhere before going so that they can follow up, and if you are in any trouble spot, then they can have sort of direct communication with you. But that also puts us to another thought process where you would feel that it is kind of infringing their freedom to move, and it is like it makes one feel little uncomfortable. Maybe it is being undertaken with right intents yet. So your thoughts on this particular idea?
See, registration is good because registration will mean that you will be able to track that person in case of trouble. So that is very good. So rather, because sometimes some people are coming forward and they're not even explaining what is their name, they're in hiding, or we do not know who is the person. But if the person is registered and we find he's not in touch with his family, we can find him. So that way, that is good. Secondly, you already have their passports, you already have their information. So at least what is already there, you could use. Besides this, what is more important is knowing the laws of the country that you go to, and which is where we are not doing anything about it. What we are doing is we spring up a new bill suddenly and we talk about that, but that is very less. Number two, we are not providing any legal help from government. Government at this time, when people are in this situation, they need to give them some legal help. They're only providing consular access, and counselors do not have local lawyers, because unless you know the US laws, they are not going to give them the correct guidance. So without correct guidance, they will make, and that several mistakes be costly later on. So this is one very important message which I would like to give to the
So
government.
I want to repeat what you said, that government of India should work in coordination with the consul generals here to have a legal cell, legal meaning uh, experts who are aware and knowledgeable about US, especially immigration related laws, so that they can help people who are in this situation. So there was a news headline, and again, it might not be exactly official version, but some Indian leader stated that the government of India has asked America not to deport students. But again, this may have a lot of ifs and buts, and I don't have exact knowledge as to whether it came from foreign minister herself or whether they can actually do something like that, because once you are here, you need to abide by US law. So having taken that into account, I move towards the US side, and in some sensitive cases, politicians also take interest, and especially as you mentioned, the kind of environment that is there at the moment for immigrants. And there are some politicians who otherwise also feel that if the community members are in trouble, then they stand by them. So do you think it is needed that the local Indian American community should work in coordination with their representatives here, US congressmen, senators, etc., to have a proper resolution of this situation?
See, how the local community can help is to get the number of people who have been duped. The local community should make a list of people who have been duped and then consult an attorney what can be done. So, which I find a lot of them are very helpful. But unfortunately, what I find is there are so many community organizations that each of them are working in tandem. They do not work together. So the problem comes there, where one organization is going in one direction, another one is going in another. That's why I say that eventually the person who's affected individually will really have to fight for this case. Everybody is trying to do a good job. The community organizations are doing a good job to help them. The Indian government is trying to find out where in far-flung these areas these people are stuck. But as far as things like deportation is concerned, nobody can force anybody to be deported, and nobody can stop also anybody to be deported. So what is being said is not correct, because if the court orders deportation to the student, he will have to go. And neither can he forcibly, no, either can anybody forcibly send somebody. So this is the question which only attorneys really who know the law can really give you guidance on this. And if government is interested, they could hire attorneys. But unfortunately, the government only relies on community organizations which are free. So anything that is free to the government is very good. Anything that is paid is not required. And unfortunately, you get good professional advice only if you're able to pay, because attorneys also have to pay their bills. Attorneys also have to survive. It's not easy. Not, you will not find many pro bono attorneys like myself who've done cases for almost 25 years pro bono, because I just am very passionate about my country. I'm passionate about United States. I'm passionate about India. I'm passionate about human rights. So I had written 3 books in the past, if you remember: Immigrant's Dream, Lives on the Brink, and now I came up with the book Never Again. It's all on immigrant stories. And this is yet another immigrant story. It is not going to just affect 129 students. It's affected 600. It's going to affect 10,000 already, and 15,000 more will be affected. Why? Because they will be transferring from one university to another university, and they will continue to face this problem for the next maybe 5 to 10 years. So this is, you're not seeing the end of the situation. It is just a tip of the iceberg.
So you rightly said tip of the iceberg, and I want to thank you for coming up with these books. And I remember having read Lives on the Brink and Never Again. I look forward to read. And going back to the students' future, once you are in this kind of experience, it is very difficult to rebuild. So here we are talking about young lives of all these students. And again, one wouldn't like anybody to be in this situation, but now, have you been in touch directly? Have you interacted with any of these students?
I've
And
interacted with a lot of students, and I have taken down their evidences, and I have all the records with me. And each one is planning a different type of case, and I'm assisting already quite a few students. So I have a lot of those records.
So as we move towards a future where we talk about better relations between India and America, and indeed, digital world has brought a lot of transparency for us. So one hopes that we should be in a position to avoid such situations in future. But any other idea that you think would help in preventing such happenings? And as you mentioned, students are supposed to do due diligence. So when one is excited to sort of start a new life in America, and due diligence guidelines are also not very clear to many people.
Yeah, they are not. That's why you have people who provide that guidelines. So everybody cannot do everything. There's one person like you who can make a television program, who knows ins and outs of the television program. So there are people who know ins and out of every issue. That's why governments need to have such professionals who can tell you what should be done or not done, and you can hire them to give educational workshops to people. But it's the problem is when you look for free, 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 that's when you don't get anything, because even government of India gets paid by the organizations. So one has to look at it in the long perspective and see what kind of things we are doing in India, what kind of things are we fostering, what when students go abroad, why do they go abroad from India, why don't they get something which they are looking for in India. It's a lot more things which need to be introspected, so it's not a one line
Yeah,
answer.
absolutely. So as we move towards the concluding part of our conversation, I'm reminded that even the founding father of Indian Constitution, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, also was a foreign student. He studied here at Columbia University. So we have the history of students coming from India to America,
Absolutely.
and they have done significant contributions for India after
Yes.
returning back. Uh,
Yes. Also, I would tell you, immigration is a subject. There's no guilt. One should not feel guilty that one is going overseas to study or to live, because immigration is in our blood. Everybody moves from one small city to another, from a village to another place. Immigration is a state of mind. We're always moving because things are ever changing. So just to hold oneself down in one way, that you have to just remain in India also is not possible, because we have to keep growing, and we have to look at the world as a larger picture, as a larger family. So it's only how to facilitate these things is what is important, and what is the job of the governments to do.
Wonderful. So governments, while doing their job, should also take into account the undercurrent of an idea or message or a thought process, that they should consider allocating certain funds for these kind of critical situations where attorneys are needed. And it is not just America. I believe there would be some similar or parallel situations in other European countries, Australia, UK, wherever. So I think that this is a good idea, which foreign minister and Indian law ministry should work in coordination with the consul generals in different countries. I think this requires a kind of a policy thinking, and it's a very good way of empowering Indians when they leave their motherland and move towards realizing their dreams. You have realized your dreams on various fronts. And as we conclude, I recollect you once were pride of India as a tennis player on the national horizon. And you have worked closely with your elder sister, Kiran Didi, who is presently, Kiran Bedi ji is officiating as governor. And you, I believe, visited her also in where this northeastern state. Where is she?
Pondicherry.
Pondicherry. Oh, Pondicherry. Yes, yes. So, any fresh inspiration from her in continuing to work with passion towards serving?
She is a huge source of inspiration for me. She has been always there, and I look to her for guidance. Being an attorney, I just feel that people don't take things professionally. That is the problem. Biggest lacuna I find, and even she tells me the same thing, that getting professional help is so difficult nowadays. But when it's available and people don't take it, it's a shame. So this is where I would say that I'm available to the governments, but government has to take action, has to do
Absolutely.
something. So
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
so much. I do have so many students waiting, so I have to rush.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time that you have taken and highlighting this issue, as well as sharing all the nuances related to the predicament of these students who came from India to realize their dreams. Talking to Attorney Anu Peshawaria, who she joined us via Zoom from California. Thanks and lots of good wishes. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.